from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It is the furthest point from central London where the ULEZ cameras are being placed. There is considerable local anger. There is a disconnect between central London and outer London. But don't think this is just London. These schemes are coming to every town and city in this country unless we can stop them. So join me for this live show over the course of the next hour. You'll hear all of the arguments. I will attempt to dismantle some of what I think are Sadiq Khan's outright lies and cod science. But first, let's get the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Nigel, thank you very much and good evening. This is the latest from the GB Newsroom. Breaking news first. A police officer who was hit by a train last week has died. 46-year-old Sergeant Graham Saville was trying to save a distressed man on the railway tracks in Balderton. Flags across the Nottinghamshire police force will now be flown at half-mast as a mark of respect. Nottinghamshire Chief Constable Kate Maynell says his service and sacrifice will never be forgotten. The Mayor of London says he's sorry for anyone who's suffering adverse consequences because of his policies. Speaking to GB News, Sadiq Khan said the expanded ULEZ policy is essential to protect the health of people living in the capital.
Listen, I'm always sorry for anybody who's suffering adverse consequences because of our policies, but at the same time, I've got to be honest with people and say I've been meeting bereaved mums who's lost their children because of air pollution. I've been meeting a paediatrician today who works with mums who are pregnant, suffering the ill consequences because of air pollution, and babies who are born suffering the ill consequences. I've met today a doctor who runs an asthma clinic, but also I visited Great Ormond Street, the inpatient ward at the Children's Evelina Hospital. I met scientists, health practitioners and others. That's why I'm angry that the government's letting down London and the South East.
Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says the Mayor's decision is in poor taste.
People and families are struggling with the cost of living. That's obvious to everyone. And at that time, the Labour Party, the Labour Mayor Sadiq Khan and Keir Starmer are introducing the ULEZ charge, which is going to hit working families. I don't think that's the right priority. I don't think that's the right thing to do, and I wish they had not done it.
GB News can reveal at least 20,000 people have crossed the English Channel so far this year. Official Home Office figures show that up until yesterday, 19,800 migrants had arrived in small boats. However, GB sources reveal up to 300 migrants being brought into Dover Harbour on Border Force vessels today brings that total so far this year to over 20,000. It's understood they crossed the Channel in at least 6 dinghies. That comes as the government insists it's stopping the boats. And finally, tens of thousands of airline passengers have seen their flights cancelled today due to the knock-on effects of an air traffic control fault. Analysis of flight data shows at least 281 flights have been cancelled at the UK's 6 busiest airports, with Gatwick and Heathrow worst hit. The Transport Secretary told GB News an independent review will take place into how the technical problem began. Mark Harper also says he's in touch with the airlines. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's back to Nigel.
Well, we are here, literally on the outermost limits of what is now Greater London. It used to be Kent County Council. ULEZ is driving people absolutely mad. They're finding any way they possibly can to avoid paying the charge. And some of them resorting to means that I would never previously have thought of. In fact, here comes George, the former landlord of the Blacksmith's Arms. Turn it off. George, is this your means of avoiding paying £12.50?
Of course. I mean, otherwise it's going to cost me £24 to come down to my local and have a couple of pints. You know?
And what about, I mean, I guess if it's going to cost you £12.50 to come for a pint, it's the same to go to the doctor's, the same to go shopping, isn't it?
Same to go here, same to go to the church, same to go to the cemetery, same to pick up a prescription. They do me in all ways.
Is this compliant, George?
Well, I don't know, it could be. Maybe necessity's the mother of invention. We'll sort something out.
Well said, George. I'm now going to show you a short package of this area and what a beautiful part of England it is, and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes' time. George, thank you.
Pleasure.
This is the furthest point from central London that is considered Greater London Authority. I've got an air monitor here, so we're 4.2 now. Go onto the London Underground and it goes through the roof. If we're worried about the health of Londoners, maybe it's the Underground that needs sorting. So this is exceptionally good. Air quality, not an issue here. This is a rural area. There are actually, in the villages here, more horses than there are people. And I have lived in this area all my life. I've never known an issue upset people as much as this ULEZ extension. Why? Well, I'll tell you why, because most people that live here are not especially financially well off. We're talking about people running their own little businesses, driving vans. We're talking about pensioners. And many of these people have got old cars. And it's all well and good to say, well, the scrappage coming from Mayor Khan, but frankly, it isn't enough to buy a new, decent car. So there's real anger. This ward, Darwin Ward, is the most rural in Greater London, so named because Charles Darwin lived and worked here for 40 years. And actually, the landscape that you see is completely unchanged from when he was here. Indeed, there's actually a bid in for this to become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Now, I do accept that this is the most rural example in Greater London that we could have chosen. But it isn't just people living within the zone that are affected, it's those living in the counties all around Greater London that are affected too.
Conceal and mask, I think, for many people, considerable anger. A lot of people here, Sadiq Khan will tell you, only 1 in 10 cars are not compliant with ULEZ. Well, that may be the case in Chelsea and Kensington. It definitely is not the case in Cudham, I can tell you. And there are horse boxes and tractors and many other issues. But the great thing for this crowd is, I've got a message for you from Sadiq Khan. Because Chris Hope, our political editor, has come hot-foot from City Hall, where he's just done an interview with the Mayor of London. Chris, what did he have to say?
Well, he said sorry, basically, in a way. He's apologetic for people who had their lives badly affected by this change in policy, but he is intent on pushing it through. He sees himself as someone who history will judge as someone who had to take big choices quite near an election. I mean, it's difficult to understand if you're out in Cudham on a warmish evening that what's coming that could happen today. But I think he feels, though, that he had to do it on behalf of families with children who have been badly affected by bad health. But let's listen to what he had to say on the apology first of all.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm always sorry for anybody who's suffering adverse consequences because of our policies, but at the same time, I've got to be honest with people and say I've been meeting bereaved mums who've lost their children because of air pollution. I've been meeting a paediatrician today who works with mums who are pregnant, suffering the ill consequences because of air pollution, and babies who are born suffering the ill consequences. I've met today a doctor who runs an asthma clinic, but also I visited Great Ormond Street, the inpatient ward at the Children's Evelina Hospital. I met scientists, health practitioners and others. That's why I'm angry that the government's letting down London and the South East.
So the argument then is about air quality, yeah?
That's right, and he sees himself as being someone who has to take measures. It's happened in Bath, in Birmingham and other cities, but he sees a lack of support from central government to mitigate the issues here. Maybe in Cudham, other support for people. Poor old George on his lawnmower there, allow him to go for his pint. I mean, but he sees himself as being a civic leader who is trying to do his best. As I said to you, Nigel, you know a bit about bravery in politics, and he could easily have not have done this so near to an election because the Conservatives will weaponise what he's done here, no question, in Cudham and elsewhere. And he does see himself as a leader of a historical line of people who are taking big choices. Let's hear what he had to say about his view of history.
Because when it comes to tackling public ill health, I think you've got to take bold action. But also when you recognise that actually between 2017 and 2026, the NHS will spend £1.6 billion treating people in hospital. By 2050, that's going to be north of £10 billion. This policy will save lives and save money.
Sadiq Khan, thank you.
Do you know what, Chris? I'd say to myself, if this action was genuinely going to save lives, then I think people might be prepared to pay a bit of a price. But we see from the inner ULEZ that's been in for the last few years that on particulate matter there has been no change whatsoever, and that nitrous oxide levels have fallen only by 3%, and that's actually because new cars have newer engines that are more efficient and have fewer emissions. And my argument back to Khan would be that actually in outer London this is going to be a tax. It's a tax on the elderly, it's a tax on the poor, it's a tax on young drivers who can't afford expensive motor cars, for no health benefit whatsoever. That's, I think, the real beef about this, isn't it?
It is, but he... it is, Nigel, but he does dispute those figures. I mean, he says that he has got evidence to show that there are the bringing the ULEZ zone in London has helped save lives, and in outer London too. So he would say against what you're saying there, that there is a case to be made for doing it. He did have one bit of good news, maybe the fears about a pay per mile, which are raised in the weekend papers.
Yeah.
He says that will not happen.
Oh right.
Even if he.
Do you believe him, everybody?
That will not happen.
It will happen.
It won't happen even if he wins the election in May.
Right. Well, you know, it started off with a congestion charge for inner London, then it went to the North and South Circular, now it's here. We see city after city all over the country, Bath, Portsmouth, Glasgow, you name it, that already have put in place congestion charging. I honestly believe, you know, that pay per mile is what they really want. On the science of it, isn't it amazing that the Deputy Mayor, Shirley Rodriguez, went back to Imperial College, who had said that ULEZ would have little or no impact on the health of children, and she asked them to reword it with 800 grand of money paid for by these people. It's all cod science.
Well, I'm not going to go there and argue science against that, but there are.
But why isn't? What I'm asking, Chris, is it seems to me he's not been challenged on this properly.
Well, he's tried. Well, he is intent on what he's doing. He looks at the lives he says he can save, and he's intent on doing it. I mean, he is definitely, you know, he's intent on doing this, and he has done it. And
it's imminent. But it's imminent.
What he wants actually is is support from home counties, counties to help bid for money from the central government. But it's not going to happen.
It isn't going to happen. No, it isn't.
Well, they want more money to help.
I mean, you know, 6 of the surrounding county councils and local councils have refused to even put signs up. Let's move on to the Tories. You say the Tories will try and get electoral benefit out of this. But who was it that first thought of ULEZ? Who was it that first approved
It's the
ULEZ?
blonde bombshell, Nigel.
Would it be Boris Johnson? So they came up with it when Khan said that he was going to expand it to the outer limits of the GLA. Then Grant Shapps, who was the Transport Minister, was perfectly happy with the proposal, and suddenly they realise that people ain't very happy, and they do a U-turn. I mean, you know, you have got considerable political experience, Chris. Are they believable on this, in your view?
Well, there were powers, as you identified on GB News, to try and stop it, but I've been told by Mark Harper today he took King's Council advice and told he couldn't do it, Nigel. So he did try and look at stopping it.
But hang on.
It's not rubbish. It's true. It's not rubbish.
Well, no. I mean, it's true. Article 143. Article 143 of the GLA Act said that the Transport Minister could override the Mayor of London if there were 2 criteria met. The first criteria, that it would be harmful to those living outside the GLA. Well, anybody living in... You know, a nurse living in Kent, working at Farnborough Hospital, doing night shift, will be paying 25 quid a day. That is injurious. That was clear. The first... the second key point was if it went against government policy. So I can only assume, if they haven't gone for it, that actually government policy is they do want congestion charging and they do want ULEZ around the country. I don't know. I mean,
it could be, well, I mean, I think if you look at it, might go back to the issue of net zero and the issue of getting rid of new petrol cars after 2030. Because how are they going to?
Yeah.
The question they've got in politics right now, and don't blame me, I'm only covering it for you guys, but what they're trying to do...
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah, no, I know that.
How are they going to fill the coffers from a fuel tax, where they can't charge that when they've got rid of them? So EV, they're looking at things like probably pay per mile at some point. And Sadiq Khan's point is, it's not just us doing it in London, it's across the country, and that's a bigger issue.
Well, all I can say, Chris, well done for getting the interview with Sadiq Khan, and thank you very much indeed. In a moment, we're going to have a debate between somebody passionately opposed to ULEZ and somebody who believes it really is the right thing to do. Never let it be said on GB News, we don't give all points of view a pretty fair airing. Back with you in a couple of minutes. Good night!
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Okay, back here with this live crowd in Cullen. It's not raining yet, but we're going to carry on regardless. And we're going to debate ULEZ. We're going to debate the real pro and anti arguments. Mike Rutherford, co-founder and chief columnist of Auto Express, the UK's #1 selling car magazine, and Donica McCarthy, environmental campaigner, director of the Climate Media Coalition, and a man who came here via e-bike, so nobody can call you a hypocrite. Donica, I want you... I mean, these folk living out here in the most rural ward of the GLA, many of them are going to pay a very heavy price. Why is it worth it?
Well, today, from my perspective, is a very positive day for London's asthmatics. There are 500,000 asthmatic people living with asthma in London, and 12 children die every year from asthma in London. I have met the parents of those children, and it's heartbreaking. As a child, I had asthma. And if ever you had an acute asthmatic attack, it's like being smothered by a cushion. So the idea the mayor was elected on a democratic mandate to clean London's air twice. And he is having the political courage to do that, despite the media attack on him. And so, in my view, today is a positive day for democracy and a positive day for children in London for cleaner air. Now, the idea about poor people is really important.
Very.
Because two things on that. First of all, the Tory government has refused to give Londoners the same help they've given poor people in other ULEZs in other major cities across Britain. So why are they penalising poor people in London by not giving the same scrappage to Londoners as they are in other cities?
Because London is run by the Labour Party.
And secondly, well, we have a Tory government.
London is run by the Labour Party.
But the government funds other cities, so is Birmingham. So the second thing about poor people is that 80% of poorer Londoners do not have a car, but they suffer the impacts of car pollution. And so therefore, if you care about poor people, what we should do is actually subsidise public transport. Because poor people in London pay the highest public transport fares in the world.
But Donoghue,
therefore
listen, if we were having this debate, in Clapham, all right, in South London, what you say would be valid. Most people, poor people, certainly in Clapham, wouldn't have a car. Actually, most middle-class high earners in Clapham wouldn't bother owning a car. What's the point? You know, you rent a car for a weekend away or whatever it is when you need it. The point is, in areas like this, without a car, you can't exist. Isn't that the point?
80% of London, poor Londoners don't have a car. It's 70%.
Not here.
You're right. It's 70% in outer London and it's nearly 85% in inner London. So 70% of poor people in outer London do not have a car, and they're paying the highest public transport fares in the world.
Donoghue, there is no public transport here. That's the point. There's hardly any. Mike Rutherford, Donoghue's very passionate. You know, he believes that there can be benefits for asthmatics. I question that, given that the ULEZ to the North and South Circle has made almost no difference to air quality at all. Generally, the air in London is a damn sight better than it was 50, 100 years ago. We're very grateful for that, of course. What would your argument against the ULEZ extension be, or ULEZ as a whole?
Well, you know, who doesn't want clean air? We all do. This notion that somehow the motorist is happy to live with dirty air is ridiculous. We don't want that either. But why is the exhaust pipe of the car being blamed for everything, for all the pollution? I actually, you know, I think I might have sent it to you at the time, Nigel. I wrote a piece in Auto Express which listed the 10 major causes of greenhouse gases. And there was everything from energy creation to industry to agriculture, I have to say. What about the lorries, the buses, the aircraft, the rivercraft, etc., etc.? So I think we're kidding ourselves. We're kidding ourselves if we think that by curing the problem of the car exhaust pipe, we're going to cure the air pollution.
And cars are getting better and better, Donna,
of course.
aren't they? I mean, with every year that goes by, new cars are much cleaner and more. But on the point of public health that you've raised, and there's no question that it is a serious issue. You know, here we are in Cudham. We're at 4.9 is our current reading on this air meter. As you know, anything below 10 is considered good. If you and I now went on to the district line, this thing would rocket up to 130, 140. I mean, actually, genuinely injurious levels. Now, if the Mayor of London was as worried about people's health as he says, I don't think he is. This to me is about tax and control more than anything else, and I believe that. But surely, if we really worried about public health and asthma in particular, the millions of people every day that use London Underground, it seems he's made no effort to clean that up at all.
What about all the kids that get on the Underground?
First of all, first point is you say Sadiq Khan doesn't believe in this himself personally. I think that's unfair because he himself suffers. He himself suffers from asthma, so he identifies with the 500,000 Londoners who suffer from asthma. My next door neighbour is an elderly lady. Whenever there's a peak in car pollution in London, she suffers from heart disease and she cannot walk when there's high pollution measures.
But hang on.
And secondly, the point about the Underground...
Go on, finish on that.
So, a point about the Underground is that, yes, there is high metal pollution on the Underground, but people don't live on the Underground. They do live on roads, major roads around London. And if you look at the map today,
Hang on, bear with us, bear with him. Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
If you look at a map of London today, including outer London, you will see the map of where the pollution peaks across London are on the major roads. And in outer London today, if you look at the maps, they are breaking the World Health Organization's safety levels today.
Well, the only problem there...
In Uxbridge.
The only problem there is we're a bit suspicious of that. Final word, Mike Rutherford. The point being made is that air quality next to main roads can be bad. That is a fair point.
Of course, but what is not a fair point is that you blame the lady's asthma problem. You said specifically car pollution. Yeah. That's what I mean. It's narrowed down to the car. It's not the bus, it's not the truck, it's not anything else, it's the car.
But
so we're barking...
Guys, I tell you what, I've tried to make sure you both get a fair crack at it.
One last point, Nigel.
Very quick.
If he really believed in this, if he really believed that these cars are killing children and others and harming us, he would say, I don't want your money, I'm going to ban the lot of them. The reason he's doing it is he wants your...
That is a logical argument. Mike Rutherford, Donna McCarthy, thank you both very much indeed for joining me for that package. Now, let's get the opinion of some local people. I went out yesterday and filmed some local people who will be severely impacted by this.
Well, there are literally more horses than people living in this part of what is Greater London. And this is a real issue. It isn't just local people that ride. People come out from London, underprivileged kids, etc. Now, Ronnie's been leading protest after protest. What's the big beef with horse riders?
I think really it's all the non-compliant vehicles, as you can see behind us. None of these vehicles are compliant, yet some of them, nothing wrong with them. The scrappage isn't going to cover, new horse boxes, and then it affects our hobbies and everybody else from the equestrian industry, like farriers, vets, that all come in from, like Kent, Surrey. Then our prices will go up. So it's a knock-on effect with everybody.
Let's talk to some horse box owners, shall we?
If everyone got rid of their non-compliant horse boxes, there aren't enough transporters to do that. And there's not enough encouragement for people to do that. It's a hard job to do.
Just chatting to people around the village, so many people are worried about how much they have to spend to change their car. I don't just use my car for work, I use it for personal use as well. Yeah. Community events like this, I'm humping speakers around this recreation ground, Well, how am I going to do that if I haven't got this car? And I'm just going to have to spend the £12.50 a day because I don't want to spend £20,000 getting rid of a perfectly good car. So how's that going to improve air quality? It's not. It's just going to put £12.50 in the pocket
It's
of
a
Sadiq
tax.
Khan. Yeah.
Tax and control, that's my theory on it.
Well, there we are, tax and control, that's my belief. I don't think it's going to make any difference to air quality. I thank the gentleman for coming in and having passion on both sides of the debate. In a moment, in the hot seat, the leader of Bromley Council, Colin Smith. Back with you in a couple of minutes.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Back here with this very enthusiastic audience in Cudham. I did say to them before the show, don't be backwards at coming forward with your views. Well, they're certainly not being that this evening. Now, I'm joined by Councillor Colin Smith, leader of the Borough of Bromley, and you have been since 2017. I know that you and several of the other boroughs had a go with a legal action. You didn't succeed. You had a go, and I think people respected you for trying to do that. But Colin, you know, you're representing the Conservative Party, and I want to put this to you. Boris Johnson was the man who said we should go for ULEZ. It was rubber-stamped through the Department of Transport when Khan said he was going to extend it to the outer edges of the GLA. And then, when you had the chance, when your party, not you personally, but when your party had the chance to invoke Article 143 of the Greater London Act and literally stop it dead, yeah, Khan could have gone for judicial review, he could have challenged it, but it would have pushed it beyond the mayoral elections next May, prevented a load of damage. They didn't do it. Why should we trust the Conservatives on ULEZ?
I think 2 things I would say, Nigel. First of all, regarding Grant Shapps, rubber stamping it, etc. And you can check this out on the internet, YouTube, fact check. What he was actually referring to in the much vaunted letter from 2020 was extending the then ULEZ scheme to the north and south circular boundaries, not the perimeters of Outer London. And that is actually on the web if people want to go.
Right, so that's a dispute then between Shapps and between the Mayor of London.
Absolutely, and there is qualitative comment from seniors in the party about that. Regarding Section Article 143 of the 1999 Act, I must say I was very, very disappointed when I found that was being used as a reason not to do anything. I've been speaking to fairly senior MPs today on that point, because one of the things the government, if I might make so bold and make myself very unpopular, hasn't done particularly well hitherto is explain Mr Harper's position so that everybody can understand it.
Hasn't done particularly well. I've no idea what it is.
And what they will say, and what you will be seeing PR on about this, is an explanation as to why they can't invoke that, which in short runs to the fact that whilst Part B and damage to neighbouring counties is filled, I'm told that the reason you can't invoke Section A is because what Khan has done doesn't run against any existing policy, because there isn't a policy.
Well, isn't it about time? Isn't it about time, after 13 years in government, there was a blooming policy?
Well, you wouldn't find me arguing with that.
Well, no. Well, OK, fine. Colin, I think you and I think on very similar lines to this, and you're clearly embarrassed by your own party on this. But I can see what's going to happen. We're going to have the mayoral elections coming up next May. We're going to be told, vote for the Conservatives, vote for Susan Hall. Never heard of her, but never mind. Vote for Susan Hall, and all's going to be well. I mean, my question to you is, why should we trust Susan Hall? Why should we trust the Conservatives, given that, as you say, they've got no real position on this?
Well, I think two things. First and foremost, Lord Moylan, Daniel, is in the throes of moving, albeit perhaps and after the event, action through the House of Lords to tack on to an existing bill that will stop this happening again.
Bit late for Cudham, isn't it?
It is too late for Cudham. It is too late for Cudham on this example. But what it will do, if it's successful and if we can get cross-party cooperation, will be to stop road price charging.
All right.
Because that's clearly where he's going.
No, I get that.
So, but that's leg one.
Right.
Your question is a fair one.
Yeah.
How does that help for the next 8 months before Susan does or doesn't get in? It clearly doesn't, as things stand. But what you will look for after the Queen's speech and after Parliament comes back in November, is... I beg pardon.
We all do that, don't worry.
I do beg pardon. It certainly is.
After all those years.
It certainly is. Bless him and her.
Well done.
Yes. But what we would hopefully look for, if there is cross-party agreement, and bear in mind there are an awful lot of very embarrassed, very awkward-feeling Labour candidates for the general election next year. There will be a lot of people who had thought it was going to be a shoo-in, and what we're hoping is if we can get cross-party support...
I hope you do,
we'll do
but
that.
I hope you do, but I'm appalled that we're well where we are. Final thought. Up until 1965, Darwin Ward, this ward, the most rural ward in the GLA, and Biggin Hill Ward, were both part of Sevenoaks District Council and Kent County Council. The boundary changes brought us back into it. Let's have a look at the front page of today's Evening Standard. Please, if you can put that up for me. There it is. Gotcha. London's green dream comes alive. Do you know what that tells me, Colin? That tells me that the needs and desires of people that live in inner London, in urban London, are completely different from those living in rural Greater London. And I put it to you, why should the people that live in Darwin Ward, and no disrespect to you as leader of Bromley, but why should the people that live in Darwin Ward and Biggin Hill Ward not say, the hell with it, we want to leave the Greater London Authority and rejoin Kent? I have to say, I didn't know, I hadn't road tested that. It feels like Brexit all over again with this lot.
Well, as you know where I am on that as well.
But you see my point?
Yeah, allow me to answer. I mean, what we have clearly got is a Zone 1 mayor who uses Outer London as a cash point machine. We've seen it for years. This just exemplifies it. He knows it doesn't matter what he does to Outer London because he knows he doesn't get his votes here. So that's what we're suffering from. But as far as your question's concerned, which
Yeah.
is a good one, and a lot of people ask it with increasing regularity, is it will take a change of primary legislation to unpick the law from 1964 come 5.
Yeah.
I can't.
Colin can't do that. No.
I can't.
No,
but
sure.
what I would recommend anybody that did want to think in terms of unpicking it, start lobbying your MPs. That's the only way you can get pressure on it.
Yeah.
I think, in all honesty, Nigel, something I've been arguing for very strongly for many years is give people the choice.
Yeah, OK. No, that's fair enough.
One size doesn't fit all.
No, well, as I say, that Evening Standard front page, the editorials we're reading show inner London, where people don't need cars, don't own cars, and out here in Cudham and Biggin Hill, where without a car, you can't really exist. Ladies and gentlemen, big round for the council leader, Colin Smith, please. Thank you. Now... we're now at 2.5 on the reading. We've got some of the... Sadiq, we've got some of the cleanest air in the world here. We could be on the Matterhorn. In a moment, it's going to be the turn for the audience. In a moment, it's going to be Farage, barrage to Farage, from Farage at large, and Colin's agreed to stay with me for this, which is terrific. See you in a couple of minutes' time.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
OK, let's go. It's Barrage the Farage. I've got their names. I have absolutely no idea what Alan Cook is about to ask me. Alan.
Hi, Nigel. It's great to see you outside Downing Street today, but obviously we'd rather have you inside Downing Street. But, yeah, my question to you is, I have a 22-year-old BMW that is compliant. I've got a 46-year-old 4.2-litre Jaguar that is only really good for driving between petrol garages, and that's compliant. How is this actually helping pollution, the ULEZ?
Well, it's a good point. There was a 1934 Austin in the car park here earlier, and that's compliant. Yeah, no, Colin, it is quite confusing for people, isn't it? Because wasn't it the case that actually we were told 20 years ago that diesel engines were better for the environment than petrol engines? So should we, Colin, should we trust anybody in national government?
I hope you can trust the government, but as far as this scheme goes, you're all not missing the point. You need to focus on the point. This is not about health. It's a tax-raising scam, and it's making it up as it goes along.
I think that's right, Alan. I mean, given the case that you've just put, what else can it be?
There is no other answer. It is a tax generation on the poor.
On the poor, on the elderly, on the young, on the disabled, and many, many others. Right, Barbara, you're up next.
Hello. I just wanted to ask if you felt that property prices would be impacted on the outer boroughs with the ULEZ.
Yeah, there will be an impact on property prices. How big it'll be, I don't know. They've been falling a tiny bit anyway. But given that net migration into the country is running at 600,000 a year, the one thing I'm pretty certain of is that anything from the middle market down to the bottom end of the market isn't going to fall that far on a simple basis of demand and supply. But does it have an impact on a house here in Cudham? Yeah, I think it possibly does. I think it possibly does. But I don't think it's going to be particularly injurious. Is it something you're fearful of?
Yes, but I think the prices are dropping a bit in the area anyway, so you just have to wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, and there are many other economic factors, of course, that could affect house prices. Now, we did have the Conservative candidate for Mayor of London on the previous GB News programme, and asking a question here is somebody who's been campaigning on cars and car issues for, I can't think how many years. Howard Cox has been director of the Fair Fuel Alliance, and he is running as London Mayor for Reform UK. So we've got plenty of balance on this programme. We've had Sadiq Khan, we've had Susan Hall. Howard has got a question for us.
Hello, Nigel. Yeah, it's a very, very simple one. We've been treated like, well, I won't say the word because we do that. But let's face it, it's been dishonesty thrown at us from all directions by Sadiq Khan. Do you think he should be subject to an independent statutory public inquiry?
Well, you know, the idea that we can hold politicians to account for either breaking national manifestos or for not telling the truth is a difficult one. You could argue that Boris Johnson, in the end, did lose his job as Prime Minister for not telling the truth. And when I went to Washington, D.C. the week after Boris had gone, the American media said, goodness me, if not telling the truth applied in Washington, there'd be no one left in Congress at all. I think really the answer in any democracy is the only way you really satisfy this is by voting people out at the next election. And that really is the answer. But I just think tonight here, on the rural outer edges of what is now the GLA, I think there's a different question here tonight. I just don't think these wards should be part of Greater London. I just think we're in a very, very different place. But Howard, good luck with the campaign. Good luck to all the candidates in the campaign. You're in for a busy couple of months.
This for November! Stoning!
Okay. Now, we are being balanced here, Colin, aren't we?
We are, very balanced.
Good. Now, Conrad has a question for us. Conrad.
Good evening, Nigel. If we've left the EU, why is Sadiq Khan using an EU directive for emissions?
Right, now, I thought if I was to come up with, Euro 6 and Euro 2 and all the different criteria that have been agreed on emissions, even though we've got Brexit, I might be seen as something of a conspiracy theorist. However, Conrad raises a very serious point here, that when we were members of the European Union, we signed up to a whole lot of actually quite long-term commitments that in many ways go beyond general elections. And I think to me, and I'm going to get your answer in a moment on this, but to me, I think one of the slight disappointments of this is we haven't really broken away from EU law in the way that I think many Brexiteers had hoped. And goodness me, it is actually now 7 years ago. I have to come back to you, Colin, on this. I mean, you know, Conrad's right. We did agree at a European level to a whole series of reductions. And you could argue that Khan is enforcing that. But a more general point, we haven't really quite got the Brexit we voted for, have we?
Nigel, I tend to agree with you. It wasn't as clean, I think, as many of us were hoping. And the Northern Ireland situation in particular, I think there's long been a bugbear that has potentially held us back. So it hasn't been a fully satisfactory exit. Wished it had been cleaner myself.
Do you fear that a Labour government, and it looks like I mean, if you believe the polls, or even half believe the polls, it looks like we're going to get Sir Keir Starmer. Oh, sorry, we can't call him Sir anymore. He doesn't like that. But we're going to get Keir Starmer as Prime Minister. Do you fear that, you know, he might try and bring us back towards the EU?
Well, we'd better call him Sir Keir Starmer then, haven't we? But it's a good one to win for the Conservatives next year. It's not looking great at the moment. A year's a long time. Never say never. We start second favourites, I think, from here. But would Keir Starmer move us back into the EU? I don't know. He says not. Do we believe him?
Well, yeah, I don't know. Conrad, you've raised a very important and a slightly complex point, but an important point. What's your thought on it?
Well, I think we should have used some of the experts in this country, like Imperial College and King's College, and places like that.
Yeah, Imperial College, who, of course, got all the modelling wrong when it came to the pandemic, and pretty much everything wrong. But mind you know, they were told, of course, to rewrite the report by the Deputy Mayor of London, and that is the cod science this is based on, and that makes me very, very angry. The final question goes, it better be a corker, it goes to Jackie.
Right. Do you think the current government are not opposing the ULEZ scheme more vigorously at the moment because they wish to use this with their manifesto in the next general election?
Jackie, you are so cynical about politicians, political figures. Do you know, I actually think that is I believe that is absolutely right. That the Tory party will try and use this at the mayoral election. You'll be told that Susan Hall was opposed to all of this right from the word go. That the Tory party are to be believed on this, and I think it's very cynical. And I guess what really upsets me a bit on this is by then an enormous amount of damage will have been done. And I would like to have seen, I would love to have seen 143 being invoked, because what that would have meant is that Khan would have had to challenge it through a judicial review. That would have taken months and months and months to come to court, and we could have got into the next mayoral elections without this ULEZ extension being in place. So I'm pretty angry. Clearly that's your view too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm a Tory through and through.
Yeah.
Wouldn't vote for him again.
Yeah, no, it is very, 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 very disappointing. So, there we have it. To sum up tonight's debate, Colin, there are clearly some enormous passions in this room. And, I've lived, as you know, I've lived in these villages all of my life. I don't think I've ever seen quite such a level of engagement in current affairs issues and anger. I've never, and goodness me, I mean, outside Downing Street earlier. Let's have a look. Let's have a quick look at me outside Downing Street earlier on today.
Come on, Nigel.
And this was really interesting. I was amazed. I was just sort of almost at random driving down, Whitehall, and I came across this, and I really, really found it hard to believe. Right, let's have a look at this clip, please, of me outside Downing Street earlier. So there I was, and she was she was an outlier. She sort of ran out to meet me. By the way, folks, it's not raining here. So we saw that. And people were, a lot of people going past, bibbing, etc. But the sheer level of passion, and Howard was there earlier, and one or two others in the crowd were there earlier. The sheer level of passion in the crowd really was something to behold. And we then, as I came back through South London, through Coney Hall, saw cameras being erected. And for those at home that think it's just for coming in and out of Greater London, no, it's if you live in the zone. You live inside the zone and you pop round to the shops, you've got to pay the £12.50. And then we actually sent out our team out around South London to look at cameras that have been spray painted, one or two that have been, cut down and filled in with concrete. So there's going to be an epic battle between those that wish to break the law and cause criminal damage, and those going around putting up new cameras. And I'm not going to take sides on that at all. That would be completely and utterly wrong for me to do so. But yeah, huge passion there in Downing Street today. And this story of vandalism of cameras, well, you know what they say. When laws become enemies of men, men become enemies of laws. And I'm not supporting in any way the action. I can't support the action. I simply can't do it. But I want to say, Colin Smith, thank you very much for coming along this evening. I want to thank all of our guests for coming on and giving us a range of opinions this evening. Thank the audience for being so engaged. And we're going to finish with a little ditty about the Mayor of London from Bell and Sperling.
This is the worst decision from a London mayor. He's taxing the poor, he says for cleaner air. But the public have spoken, and now your cameras are broken. He's about as unpopular as Tony Blair. Can't ULEZ is so unfair, but for £12.50 you can pollute the air. Your car will stay in the garage if you don't pay the silly charge. We should sack him and replace him with Nigel Farage. Nigel says just how it is. The mayor is a clown. Nigel says just as it is. This man has ruined London town. 'Cause Nigel's always on the ball. Nigel says
Khan's policy is detrimental.
Nigel says
This is a tax on poorer society.
Nigel says
Businesses that simply won't be able to survive.
he's Nigel Farage.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News. The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also